So moving on to the centroid of plane areas. So I think centroid in physics is your center of gravity or the center of mass of a material. So it will be, so the center of mass per material will differ depending on, again, its structure, its geometry, and then also its orientation. So maglaylahi ang positioning sa centroid depending on the scenario of the material. But in our case, so since in physics the material is in a three-dimensional figure, so we'll just focus first on determining the centroid in the 2D plane. So x and y plane sa walay z-axis. So I think also in the basic fundamentals of physics, when we try to get for the centroid of a material, so we also try to use the 2D plane. So for example, you're going to solve for the weight of the box. So di ba murag two-dimensional pa atong box sa physics, dili pa siya three-dimensional. Okay, so for example, this is your material. So let's say it's a plate. So in physics, so we usually determine the center of gravity by using the weight of the material. So for example, the weight is changing. So especially when you go to fluid mechanics, so since the material or the body of water is not stable, so the weight will be changing depending on the orientation of the container of the liquid. So that's why it's delta W. So it may shift from one area to another area. So that's one application of this topic. So when you reach fluid mechanics, so you'll be needing this particular topic again in solving your centroid of your, so especially if kanang nanamuta sa topic atong stability of moving bodies sa water. So kana, so the concept in physics is that it's more likely the same as Varignon's theorem. So the total weight and the distance of your centroid, so that's on the left side, is equal to the sum of the different parts of the weight. So meaning if ato siyang i-chop-chop or ato siyang itagi-tagi, so it is just the summation or the sum of the different parts of the weight multiplied by its corresponding distances also, respective centroid distance. So on the left side, it's the total material. That's why it's bar x times the total weight. But on the right side, this one is the weight component. So meaning, let's say you have three different weights, and then you're going to add them up all to determine the ultimate distance of the centroid and the total weight as well. So more likely, that's the concept of your center of gravity in physics. So in bar y also, so you just have to shift it into y components. So meaning you're going to measure distances in the y axis. So the same formula, the same concept, but this time you're going to utilize the distances along the y direction. So the first one is x direction, second one is y direction. So that's coming from physics. So when we go to our topic later, so instead of using the weight, so we're going to use the area in solving the centroid of your polygon or any shape figure presented in the problem. Okay, so properties of centroids. So centroids must line on any line of symmetry of a homogeneous figure. So most likely we're going to be solving figures having homogeneous properties. So for example, when we go to material, so it's purely metal, it's purely copper, it's purely bronze. So if it's non-homogeneous, so that might use some advanced calculations in determining the centroid of the material. So the geometrical center is the centroid. And again, as what has this been discussed ganina, so again from the formula bar x times the weight is equal to the summation of the different weight components, diba? Delta W. So in our case is we're going to take several parts of the area. So let's say you're going to have infinite number of areas. And then after that one is we're going to sum it up to get the distance of the centroid. So meaning from these formulas, so let me write this one first. This one is wide. So from these formulas instead of the weight, so we're going to utilize the area formula. And then delta area. And then same goes for the y aspect. So we're going to utilize also delta area. So to sum the formula for the centroid of the area, so these are the formulas. For example, this is your differential area. That will be x sub c and then y sub c. So this will be our representative area or our delta A. So delta A will most likely transfer or transmute into the differential area. But this is the formula here, differential area. So the distance going to this differential area becomes x sub c and then y sub c. So that's why you have x sub c here and then you have y sub c on the right side. Again, if we try to understand the summation concept or the sigma notation na operation, so that was the operation leading into the integral symbol. So in solving areas before, so we are using sigma notations. So most likely what we are getting using sigma notation are just approximation values for the area. And to get the exact value, so we translated from sigma notation going to your integral symbol to make the answer more accurate. Okay, so this is the formula for bar x, then the formula for bar y. So take note also that in the formula, you have an area here. So to make the summary of our process in leading to answering our bar x and bar y, so what we need to do first is we're going to graph our equations. So of course, that's with solution or with evidence. And then next is we're going to solve for the area. So you'll be needing the concept again of vertical strip and horizontal strip. And after solving for the area, this is the time that we're going to solve for bar x and bar y. So in solving for bar x, we're going to determine x sub c first, and then the differential area. And then for bar y is we're going to determine y sub c first, and then the differential area. So short tip here is before we go to the example, for steps 2 to 4 is you're only going to utilize one method of strip. So if you want to use a vertical strip, so meaning for numbers 3 and 4 steps, you have to use vertical strip as well. Or if you want to use horizontal strip, so from steps 2 to 4, it's purely horizontal strip. So you need to choose one. And also, I think you're since you have been answering problem sets, so you may know what strip is better or faster in leading to the final answer. So, di ba, as what I told you before, so the vertical strip might be a difficult process compared to the horizontal strip, which is easier, di ba? So, one strip is easier compared to the other. So, you have to discover on how to determine which strip is better. Right? So, I think for us to appreciate the formula, so I won't be discussing how we derive the formula because di na siya important at this point. So let's just use the formula directly. And I think what you need to do here is understand how to use the formula. Okay, so let's go to example number 1. So we need to locate the centroid of the region bounded by x squared equals 8y and x minus 2y plus 8 equals 0. So notice that I just put the graph immediately. Again, in your case, you need to create the graph from scratch. You need to provide solutions on how you created your graph. So I think you can refer this in our previous recordings on how we generate graphs. So notice I just put a vertical strip. So before I'm trying to determine which strip you're going to use. So diba, as tip from the last meeting, so the strip must be consistent all throughout your region bounded. So what do I mean by that is that the top portion is so so let's say you're going to use the vertical strip. Excuse. So again, if you're going to use the vertical strip, so it should be taken noted that it should be consistent all throughout, whichever location I'm going to put my vertical strip. So what do I mean by that is that the top portion, diba, as per formula of the vertical strip, that will be y top minus y bottom and dx, diba, from x1 to x2. That will be the formula for the vertical strip. So for us to utilize the vertical strip, so it should be taken noted that again, whichever portion I'm going to place my vertical strip, the top portion of the strip will always be touching the same equation, and then the bottom part of the strip will always be touching the same equation as well. Di siya magbalik-balik, di ba? So in this case, if I put the vertical strip on the very left, so it's touching the blue part on the top portion, and then touching the red part on the bottom portion. So same goes for the other strip. So the same sila, di ba? So touching the blue part on the top portion, then touching the red graph on the bottom portion. So pwede siya vertical strip, di ba? Now if I'm going to use horizontal strip, so let's say I'm going to place my horizontal strip at the very end. So let's say at the middle part also. Then the other one is at the bottom part. So let's try to determine if we can use the horizontal strip. So here is on the right portion of, so again, if you try to write the formula for the horizontal strip, that will be x right minus x left dy from y1 to y2. So again, if we're going to utilize the horizontal strip, the right and the left portion must be consistent. So the right portion is the red one, the left portion is the blue one, the right portion is the red, the left portion is the blue. But at the bottom portion of the graph, the right portion is red, the left portion is red also. So dili siya pwede, di ba? Kaya if you're going to use the formula, right and left are the same, so it will give you a zero value. So that's why we can't utilize the the horizontal strip. Okay, so let's try to erase the horizontal strip. Okay, we cannot utilize this one. So I hope you understand why we cannot use the horizontal strip. Okay, so again, since we are going to utilize your vertical strip, so your y top, so meaning our equations must be translated into y equals x something. So this formula, so it should be y equals something, di ba? Then this formula also will be y equals something. So it's presented here. So I just took the liberty of getting the y directly so that we can proceed, because the important stuff is in solving the centroid. So again, you still need to show how you have created these equations. So di lang siya magically appeared again. So again, if it's magically appeared, so I will not give credit to your answer. Okay, diba? Murag, it's super obvious nga murag gi-copy ra jud siya kay you're not providing evidences of your solution. Okay, so white top again in the vertical strip. So the area or the white top is the blue portion. So this will be x over 2 plus 4, and then minus the bottom strip, which is the bottom portion of the strip, which is the red graph. So that will be x squared all over 8. And then dx. So again, that will be from x1 to x2. So of course, this is our points of intersection. So again, you need to determine that one also prior to solving the area. So if you come to think of it, the solution for the centroid is super long because again, number one, ang graph lang daan will take a lot of time. So you need to graph your equations, you need to solve for the points of intersection, diba? So medyo taas-taas siya nga process. So again, in this case, I just presented the graph immediately so that we can go directly to the purpose of the topic, which is solving your centroid. But again, you have to show solutions on each part. So negative 4 going towards 8. So this one is negative 4, then going towards 8. Alright, so again, at this point, since you are now allowed to use your calculator, so you can just plug this one in your calculator. So diretso na siya. Okay, so the answer is 36 square units. So again, if I'm going to plug this one in the calculator, so usually I put many parentheses to make sure that my equations are representing the correct parameters. So parenthesis, and then parenthesis for y top, and then parenthesis again for y bottom, then parenthesis again, then dx. So that's how I plug in this one in my calculator. Okay, so this is the formula or the solution for the area. So what we have done so far is steps 1 and 2 pa, diba? So graph and then solving for the area. So questions so far? I think there's no question since you know already how to solve the area. So next is we're going to solve bar x. So bar x times the area is equal to x sub c times the differential area. So differential area will, so that's why the formula was differential area, because it will, so maagad siya sa what particular strip you are using. So since we are using vertical strip, so your differential area will translate into this formula. So x sub c, and then y top minus y bottom dx from x1 to x2. So murag kaduha mo nag-solve for the vertical strip, but there's just an extra variable which is x sub c. Muna ang purpose why the formula was written that way, because your differential area will be different because, I mean, magagad siya on what particular strip you're using, vertical ba or horizontal. Okay, so since you already know the y top and y bottom portion from the previous solution, so let's now determine your x sub c. So x sub c, so for example, this is your differential area, diba? Muna itong differential area, the vertical strip. So this differential area, so let's say this, so since this one is a rectangle, so let's say this one is the centroid. So x sub c, ang pasabot sa x sub c is the distance in the x direction going towards the centroid of your differential area. So this one is x sub c. So in x units, so that will be unknown distance x. Diba? Mo make sense siya, diba? Because we are going in this direction in the x-axis. So instead of x sub c, so we know that going towards this point is x distance. So we can say x sub c is equal to x unknown distance. So the formula will be translated again into this portion. So x1, x2, then instead of x sub c, this will be x, then times y top minus y bottom dx. So at this point, we are now ready to solve our equation. So bar x, and then the area is 36. So from -4 to 8, then x, then you're going to have y top is x over 2 plus 4, then y bottom is x squared over 8, and then dx. So I think in this portion, you cannot utilize fully the calculator. So you need to separately solve the right hand portion first. Then you're going to give the value. So this is 72. So divided by 36. So bar x is equal to 2 units. So it's not square units because again, the centroid or the location of the centroid is in distance, di ba? Is in units distance. So that's how you solve bar x. Okay, so this is the solution. So this is just x. So next is we're going to use bar y. So if we're going to plug in the formula of bar y, so this will be y sub c times the differential area. So again, our strip is vertical, so we may translate this formula into, so from x1 to x2, y sub c, and then the differential area is y top minus y bottom dx. Okay, so again, since we already know that our y top is the blue graph, the y bottom is the red graph, so what's left to determine is your y sub c. So again, the same concept as your x sub c. So again, since this one is your differential area, and let's say this is the centroid, so we're going to determine this y sub c distance. Now take note that our integral on the right side is with respect to x. So earlier, our x sub c is dali ra siya i-determine because since we need to translate our equations in terms of x, so this is going to the right distance x directly, di ba? But for y sub c, so we cannot utilize the y variable because our integral on the right side is integrating with respect to x. So we need to shift your y sub c in terms of x. So how do we do that? So notice that this one is the midpoint between these two locations, the blue and the red points. So we need to use the concept of midpoint formula. So I hope that you have this one in your, I think it's in basic algebra. So if this is your y bottom, then this one is your y top. Y top distance, diba? So the midpoint formula is y top plus y bottom all over 2. So that will be your y sub c. So again, if you don't understand why this is the formula, so let's try to go back to katong number line ninyo. Ba number line. So let's say this is 0, this is 1, this is 2, this is 3, and then 4. So let's say we're going to have 2 points, 1 and then 4. Diba? So this is point number 2, this is point number 1. So in solving for the midpoint, diba? So if you're going to look at it, if you're going to look this one closely, the midpoint is at this location at 2.5, diba? This is the midpoint. So in solving the midpoint, again, as per formula for midpoint formula, so P sub m is equal to P1 plus P2 all over 2. So let's say that will be 1 plus 4 over 2. That will be 5 halves. In decimal, that will be 2.5. So this is the midpoint, diba? So I hope that you understand where this formula came from. So it came from the midpoint formula concept. So that's why if we try to further apply or translate the equation, so this becomes x sub 1, x sub 2, and then your y sub c becomes y top plus y bottom over 2, then y top minus y bottom dx. So that's how you translate your equation. So of course, if you want to put directly y top and y bottom, so pwede rasad, but so if you're going to do this in this manner, so y top and then times 36, I mean y bar times 36, and then from negative 4 to 8, then let's say you're going to place y top, which is x over 2 plus 4, and then plus x squared over 8 all over 2, then multiplied by y top minus y bottom. So if you want to solve this one directly, so pwede rasad, but in my case, so I want to help my calculator a bit. So from this portion here, I'm going to combine first the terms. So this becomes y bar times area. Then from x1 to x2. So notice that the numerator will be a difference of squares. So this becomes y top squared minus y bottom squared all over 2 dx. Diba? So murag mas dali siya ikuan sa calculator kay you won't be plugging in many terms on the right side. So even further, I can also take 1/2 outside, and then this becomes from x1 to x2. Then I'm going to have just y top squared minus y bottom squared dx. Diba? So it's simpler. So again, try helping your calculator a bit before plugging in values kay para mas dali mo gawas ang answer. So of course, if you don't want to help your calculator, so you can plug this one also. Okay, so this will be bar y area 36 there. So 36 and then 1/2 from negative 4 to 8. So this will be x over 2 plus 4 squared minus x squared over 8 squared dx. So you're going to solve this one as bar y 36 equals something and then divide by 36 on the right side. So bar y is 3.2 units. Okay, so upon solving the excuse. So upon solving the bar x and bar y, so you can unify your answer as well. So you may present your final answer in this manner also. So bar x, bar y is equal to 2.0 and then 3.2. So pili po siya ng pagka-present sa answer. All right, so do you have questions or clarification so far from example number 1? Okay, so no concern so far. So let's try to proceed with the next example. So this is the solution. Again, you may stop at this point in your solution, then use the calculator if you want to. Okay, so let's go to example number 2. So we're going to find the centroid of the area bounded by the curve y squared equals 4x, and then x equals 0 and y equals 4. So in this example, we're going to solve this one using vertical strip first, and then the next one is the horizontal strip. So if we're going to test this one for vertical strip, so as you can see, the top and bottom portion are always touching the same graphs. So the top portion is always touching the purple graph, which is y equals 4. And then the bottom part is always touching the red graph, which is y squared equals 4x. So consistent siya, di ba? So again, for the graphing aspect, so you need to show the solution for the graph, and especially in determining the points of intersection. So napadiri isa. Okay, so in solving for the area using the vertical strip, so this is x1 to x2, and then y top minus y bottom dx. So the distance is from 0 to 4, 0 going towards 4. And then y top, so y top again is the purple line or the purple graph, that is y equals 4. So automatically we're going to have 4 here, 4. And then minus y bottom, which is the red graph, which is y squared equals 4x. So in terms of y equals x something, so converting, so we have y equals 2 square root of x. So this becomes 2 square root of x, and then dx. So again, you may stop at this point and then use your calculator in solving for the area. So area is 16 over 3, which is approximately equal to 5.33333 square units. So this will be the area of the bounded region. Okay, so next step is again we're going to determine bar x and then area. So that will be x sub c times the differential area. So again, since we are using vertical strip, so this becomes x sub c and then y top minus y bottom dx. So we need to determine x sub c. So again, since this is our representative vertical strip, so let's say this is the centroid. So going towards this distance is x distance. So you meaning your x sub c is equal to x unknown distance. So the formula again will translate into from x sub 1, x sub 2, and then instead of x sub c, this will be x, and then y top minus y bottom dx. So we can now plug in the equations. So this is 5.33, and then our limits of integration is from 0 to 4, and then times x, then times 4 minus 2 square root of x dx. So again, solve first the right hand side of the equation because I think the calculator is limited in solving dili niya kaya i-solve directly ang bar x if you're going to plug this whole equation. Okay, so on the right side, this will be 6.39, then divided by 5.33. So this will give you 1.2. So it will depend on the rounding off process that you are dealing with sa inyong mga numbers. So bar x is 1.2 units. So this is the solution again. So for bar y, so equals y sub c times the differential area. So again, since you are utilizing the vertical strip, so this converts into this format. So y top minus y bottom dx. So again, we're going to utilize or determine again y sub c. So let's say this is the centroid of your differential area, and this is y sub c. So again, we're going to use the midpoint formula. So bottom portion, the red graph, plus the top portion, or let's say top portion plus the bottom portion over 2. So this is y top plus y bottom all over 2. So again, midpoint formula. So bar y times area is equal to x1 to x2. Then you're going to have y top plus y bottom all over 2. And then times y top minus y bottom dx. Okay, so again, I want to help my calculator, but again, for your case, if you don't want to help your calculator, so you may plug this one directly in your calculator. Maganda siya pag-input, diba? So medyo taas-taas siya. So 2 square root of x, and then plus 4 all over 2, then 2 square root of x, bali day. So 4 plus 2 square root of x, and this one is 4, minus 2 square root of x. So you may also plug that one in your equation, but again sa kuha is atong style from example number 1. So I'm going to combine first. So creating difference of two squares. So x1 to x2, then this becomes y top squared minus y bottom squared all over 2 dx. Then further simplified by eliminating 1/2 or taking 1/2 outside the integral symbol, x1 to x2, then y top squared minus y bottom squared dx. So bar y times 5.33 equals 1/2 integral of 0 to 4, and then 4 squared minus 2 square root of x squared dx. Okay, so solving the right side will give us 15.99, then divided by 5.33. So bar y is equal to 3.0 units. So again, you may write the final answer as in this aspect coordinate system. So 1.2 and then 3.0. So this is the formula. Okay, so at this point, let's try solving it using the horizontal strip so that you can compare kung unsay mas nindot, diba? The horizontal strip or the vertical strip for this number. So going towards the horizontal strip, so let's say this is our horizontal strip. The right portion is the red graph. The left portion is the green graph. So this one is x equals 0. So that's one at the bottom part, magdi makita. And then if you're going to translate y squared in terms of x, so this becomes x equals y squared over 4. So this will be our x left. Our x right will be y squared over 4. So notice in this problem is that we're not dealing with any radical equations. So sa vertical strip is ang ato ang y bottom is 2 square root of x. So notice if we use the horizontal strip, we're not dealing with any radical functions. Diba? So marag mo na siya ang one tip. Try avoiding radical expressions as much as possible. Okay. That's one way of helping your calculator as well. So one way is simplifying your equations. The other way is avoiding radical functions, kind of mga square roots. Alright. So for formula is, again, for horizontal strip, this is x right minus x left dy from y1 to y2. Okay, and then we're going to have, so y1 to y2, so 0 to 4 gyapon ang ato ang boundaries. Excuse. So sorry kay masigog ko ana yung pilit kay ang kuan ang tunlan kay murag di ko kainom tubig. Maputol ang kuan. I don't know sa kay tagabuntag murag ani ko tagabuntag kanang pilit kay akong tunlan niya. In the afternoon murag wa na sad. So di siya COVID kay di man siya symptoms COVID. Anyway, x right is, so again the right portion is the red graph, so this is y squared over 4 minus x left, so notice that it's 0, so minus 0. So area is equal to, so if we try to simplify this even further, so what's left is y squared over 4 dy. Diba? Super simplified compared sa ganinang answer. So this is 16 over 3 still. So if you want to verify this one, so it's the same answer as the vertical strip. So square units. So mas simple lang inyong i-input sa calculator, di ba? So again, take note that the calculator won't be accepting y variables. So you need to plug this one as x variable lang. So balian na siya x squared over 4 then dx in your calculator. Okay. So proceeding to the bar x. So bar x and then times the area is equal to x sub c then times dA. So again, since we are using the horizontal strip, so this is from y1 to y2, x sub c, x right minus x left dy. So again, notice that this time murag mo shift na ta. So ganina atong midpoint formula is coming from bar y since we are using the vertical strip. So this time is murag mo shift na pud ta. So since we are integrating with respect to y, our x sub c must be represented in terms of y variables. So this time is kanina pud siya atong kuhaan og midpoint formula. Okay, we need x sub c to be in terms of y variable, diba? So I think you understood that. So again, if you're going to compare this one with the vertical strip, so ang y bar mo ay midpoint formula. If horizontal strip, ang midpoint formula is the x sub c portion. So I think you can just review this one once I upload the recording. So this will be our x sub c. So by midpoint formula, x sub r, x sub c, and then x sub l. So by midpoint formula, x sub c is equal to xr plus x left all over 2. So again, why we need to get the midpoint formula in your x sub c at this point, because again we are integrating with respect to y, and we need to represent our x sub c in y variables for us to be able to integrate. So muna, same goes for the vertical strip earlier. So once we reach the bar y portion, our y sub c should be represented in x variables because we are integrating with respect to x earlier. Diba? Karon is we're integrating with respect to y, so x sub c must be represented in y terms as well. So this becomes y sub 1 to y sub 2, and then x right plus x left all over 2, then x right minus x left dy. So again, you may plug this one directly by 5.33, and then from 0 to 4, then you're going to plug in y squared over 4, then plus 0 over 2, then multiplied by x right y squared over 4 minus 0 dy. So again, in my case is ako siyang i-simplify even further sa. So I'm going to have x right squared minus x left squared all over 2 dy. And then I'm going to have 1/2 integral of y1 to y2, then x right squared minus x left squared dy. So once I plug in my equation, so my equations are a bit simpler to input in the calculator kay simple na siya, di ba? Simplified version na siya. So y squared over 4 squared, and then minus 0 squared and dy. So since this one is 0, so mas further simplify pa jud siya by having x bar x 5.33, then 1/2 integral from 0 to 4. So I'm just going to have y to the power of 4 all over 16, di ba? dy. So mas dali siya i-plug in sa calculator. So bar x 5.33, then the right side is the answer. So bar x is still 1.2 units. So that's the same as what we have solved using the vertical strip. So I think you can now see the difference. If you're going to use the easier strip, so murag if imong i-analyze completely sa ang problem before using a particular strip, so you can have an easy flow of solutions. But of course, if you don't want to discover which strip is better, so pwede sad na mag-solve mo o bala magkalisod mo. Total, nabitay calculator, di ba? Right, so this one is for bar x. So 32 siya because ang 1/2 gi-multiply directly sa over 16. So ako ganina is my 1/2 is outside. So that's why it's 1/2 integral of y to the power of 4 over 16. Okay, so for the last portion is we're going to solve for bar y. So y sub c times the differential area. And again, since we are utilizing the horizontal strip, so this is from y1 to y2, y sub c, then x right minus x left, dy. So again, since we are integrating to y, so obviously our y sub c should be in y distance, di ba? So let's say this is the distance y sub c. So automatically going to this portion, that is just y distance, di ba? So we don't need to convert or use any midpoint formula because directly measured in y units naman siya dito, di ba? So this becomes y1 to y2, then instead of y sub c, this becomes y x right minus x left dy. So you're going to have bar y 5.33, then integral from 0 to 4 times y, then times y squared over 4, then minus 0 dy. So again, I want to help my calculator. So I'm going to simplify the equations first for plugging it in the calculator. So since I'm going to distribute this one, so since the other term is 0, so what's left is just y cubed over 4 dy. So bar y is 5.33. Then going to have the answer on the right side. So that's probably 16 something, diba? So 16. And then bar y is 3. So again, you can express your answer again in this format. Okay, so makita ninyo ang difference na, di ba? So, then if you want to really understand the concept of the vertical and horizontal strip, so you can just try to observe the equations given. So my tip here is first is you try to draw vertical strips on the graph that you have created. If pwede ang duha, di ba? So for example, in this case, di ba, pwede man ang horizontal o vertical strip, but you don't know which strip is better. So upon determining that you can use vertical and horizontal, so the next step is for you to observe the equation. So for example, so these are the equations presented. So x equals 0 and y equals 4 are just simple equations. So in this cunning curve, so I'll try to isolate x and y variables. So for example, I'm going to isolate y. So I'm going to have 2 square root of x. Then if I'm going to isolate x, so x is just equal to y squared over 4. So with this knowledge, I already know which particular strip I'm going to use. So I don't want to be dealing with radical expressions. So I want to deal with this one. So meaning na I'm going with horizontal strip. So that's one way of um, making a decision whether vertical strip or horizontal strip ang inyong gamiton sa equations. Alright. So questions or clarifications? So the problem set is already up. So I already published the problem set. And then for the recording, so I'll upload it on a much later date. Okay, para at least kanang maminaw mo ba, di ba? Ito mga absent, so I'll tanawon if sabot ba sila sa problem set na akong gihatag without even having the recording. Okay, so if you don't have any more questions, so that's it for today, and thank you all for listening, and I hope that you understood what I discussed today about centroids.